All right. Going live. I'm going to hit record.
Boop.
Boop. All right. First live stream in a while. Let me point this as the right browser. And we're good to go.
We still exist.
Yeah, we skipped one more show than we intended. All right, Chrome. Let's make sure this is it. Wrong one. There we go. All right. It's Thursday, March 31st, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. We are back from a long, unplanned hiatus to talk about James Bond, the mostly fictional spy.
Mostly.
All right. So yeah, we had a longer hiatus than we've really ever had on Geek Nights, except in extremely rare circumstances in these 16 plus years. Do a bunch of random stuff, like friends came over. We had some work stuff. Eventually, Scott had a hockey game, and then I had to go to London on a business trip. But we're finally back.
Yeah, we might have actually been able to get in a few shows there, but nobody realized that at some point in history, I don't remember exactly when, the Geek Nights Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday offset was offset. And so
I actually know the date it happened because I had filled my work calendar with permanent recurring meetings to make sure no one ever tried to schedule me.
I could scroll back on the calendar and figure out exactly when it was.
But we waited. I was curious if anyone would notice.
Nobody ever noticed. But yeah, this should have been a Monday, Wednesday week if we had never fucked up, but we fucked up once. And it is now a Tuesday, Thursday week. So if we hadn't have made that one fuck up, maybe the break of Geek Nights episodes would have been shorter.
Yeah, maybe the whole reason we've never had long hiatuses was because of a previous original Geek Night schedule. It just lined up with our lives, like the ebb and flow of wanting to see people and do things.
But yeah, a whole bunch of stuff happened on Geek Nights days, and since it's not our job and we don't really care if we miss a show, no one's paying us to do this. No, we're not obligated.
Yep.
We don't have a lot of ideas. Okay, let's skip. Fine. Okay. But that doesn't mean we're dead. It just means, obviously we're not dead. We're here.
Yep. Speaking of which, so in the news, guess who had COVID? That's why we didn't do a show on Tuesday. I tested positive within hours of, basically within about 12 hours of landing back in the U.S. after a week-long trip in the U.K. I am, as of now, basically completely recovered, but I'm still going to isolate for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, so the two things I got to say about that is, number one, man, it must suck to spend, so many years of your life hiding inside only to go outside once and immediately
I go out for all right, I'm going to do this business trip. I'll wear a mask the whole damn time. Nope. The slightest misstep, it immediately gets me. It immediately gets Emily.
It's imagine going into the woods and you've got this manual that's how to not get eaten by a bear, and you got your bear repellent, and you got all kinds of, you got every bear precaution in the universe, and you're out in the woods for years, never ever ever getting in trouble with a bear, and you let your guard down for a second, and a bear eats you.
Well, that's how my bike got stolen in Beacon. We used to bike to the train station in the morning because parking spaces there were hella expensive. And one day I forgot my bike lock. I had it somewhere else for some reason. And I thought, what are the odds? I kind of just jammed my bike into the pile of all the other bikes. Bike was stolen that day. Granted, that was the bike I stole back. But thankfully, because I had 2 vaccines and a booster, honestly, it felt like a really bad cold, but not even the worst cold I'd ever had. And 36 hours later, I'm feeling good enough to do a Geek Nights. Don't know if I'd feel like doing 8 hours of work, but I can do an hour of podcasting.
The other thing I got to say is that you only got this because your work made you go to London. You wouldn't have been going to London if your work didn't make you go.
Oh, no, it is clear that if I had kept my previous levels of isolation to the point that I was even avoiding things people we know are doing, where everyone has different levels, I probably could have kept avoiding it. But my worry is going to the UK showed me something that I guess because I've been so careful and lived in New York City and like haven't really left New York City that much. Like we went way upstate to ski in the winter, and yeah, like I expected people to not give a shit about COVID, like up in this rural area. But New York City, people are still treating it pretty carefully.
Not as much now.
Yeah, but still more so. When I got to the UK, I got to tell you. So I land, come out of the airport, go to my hotel, every bar. And it's like morning. Every restaurant, every bar all day, completely packed with maskless people, shoulder to shoulder. London was more crowded indoors and like more filled with spittle than I have ever seen it pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no one was wearing, not one person was wearing a mask. Even in New York, I still see the occasional person wearing a mask outside and the majority of people wearing masks indoors. Our building still requires you to have a mask on to come in.
Mm-hmm. So what I got to say to that is, since your work made you go, is this a workers' comp situation or what? Right?
It could be. I could think about exploring that. I have negative PCR.
It would be a large claim, right? It would just be a small.
Well, because the problem is the damage to me that I can prove currently very small. So
very small, not zero.
But I do have a negative PCR test from every other day on the entire trip and a negative rapid test every day. I definitely caught it on the trip, guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Yep.
I'm the kind of person who would try to do the workers' comp just for the principle of the thing.
Yep. It's
also, there's a lot of reports like, hey, that even if you get, I don't know how true all these things are, but I've seen a lot of comments and studies are like, hey, you got a COVID, but, and you got over it and you feel fine, but actually, it messed with your brain or it messed with you in some other way, something like that.
Yeah. Well, even beyond that. So apparently now, PCR test basically won't work on me for 90 days is the line. Like they'll just show positive even though I'm not anymore. So I am now exempt from being tested if I go anywhere. All I have to do is sign a thing saying I've had COVID, confirmed, and nobody gives a shit. I don't have to do any testing anywhere, which is interesting. But also my immunity theoretically also only lasts 90 days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're letting people into, Madison Square Garden without vaccine.
I mean, the last hockey game I went to with you and I were wearing masks. That kid sitting to the front left of us was wearing a mask. And I think one other person was wearing a mask on the other side of the arena.
There are still some people, but it's like the majority are not, and they're not checking for vaccination anymore. They're just like, fuck it.
Yep. So, my real fear is that it's unavoidable, and that means that we as a society have just failed. Because while I see people,
knew it was going to become endemic at some point, but is this endemic or is this still a pandemic? I don't know how to tell.
Even if like masking and other things had started to fall away, I feel like the thing we as a society should have doubled down on more than anything else are the vaccine mandates, requiring the vaccine to go places. Because that is the big line between.
I still think you should hold. I'm not even joking about this. I think you should hold people down and jab them. Right? Oh. Too bad. Unless you obviously the true medical exemptions, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? But the nut job who just is a denier, hold him down and jab him.
Or there is
that whatsoever.
There is the fear of the slippery slope of bodily autonomy. That's why the compromise usually is we won't force it on you, but you are now denied access to all public places. You're basically under house arrest.
We could talk about slippery slopes again, right? But it's like, there's a constant thing in our society where it's like because of some principle, right? It's like we don't want to go down a slippery slope, but it's like, okay, you're afraid of the next step on the slope, but you're okay with the first step. It's like, well, yeah, but I don't want to do the first step because I'm afraid of the second one.
Well, just don't go down the second step.
Just don't go down the fucking second step, right? It's like,
but what if the anti-fascists start attacking people who aren't Nazis? Like, it's in our name. That's like the only thing anti-fascists are after is the fascists. Yeah. Exactly. If the fascists go away, they don't go after someone else. They go home.
The point is society as a whole would be better if we would, go down slippery slopes and just not slip on them, right? That there's good stuff down the slope just a little ways. Go down and grab it and come back up and don't fuck up and fall down.
Yeah.
Right? How hard is that?
But the vaccine mandates seem to be just the most ridiculous thing to go away, considering that that's the last major measure we have that society will tolerate.
Yeah, I feel like, I'm not an expert, right? But it definitely, that should have been that's the easiest thing, right? Anyway.
So yeah, don't go out and get it, obviously. Like, if you haven't gotten it yet, I highly advise you to try to keep avoiding it. But if you do get it, for me personally, it was not as bad as I had feared.
Well,
mostly because I was vaccinated. Well,
you might have permanent unseen damage.
True, but also the benefits of vaccinated, healthy, young, and lucky can be a factor. So do not rely on being all four of those things, because nobody is all four of those things forever.
Yep. In fact, you might be all four of those things, and afterwards not be all of those four things anymore.
All right, so you got any news?
What was my news? I forgot.
Queens, LaGuardia.
Yeah, right. So,
the second worst airport to fly into in the greater New York City area.
Yeah, so LaGuardia Airport, which is infamously not a great airport, is actually super close to where I live. I could comfortably...
I have walked home from flights that landed in LaGuardia more than once.
It is possible to walk there. It is trivial for me to bike there. It's that close.
It is also not hard to walk out of that airport, walk down city streets, and then get on a subway.
Yep. JFK, though, is a much better airport, but it's way out there, right? I mean, not way out there, but I got to use trains to get over there, or buses or something, right? It's like, you're not walking to JFK. I could bike to JFK. It takes a while.
Yep.
Right. And they're not doing that with luggage either. So,
just have a little roll. Just have the rollie behind you,
Yeah, sure. Despite being so close, LaGuardia is actually harder to get to. Right.
Oh yeah, there's a bus that if you try to take this bus, my experiences with it are thusly: you'll stand at a stop. 3 or 4 hours before your flight, because you're a New Yorker and you're paranoid. The bus comes, it's already full, the doors don't even open, and it leaves. This will keep happening until you give up and call a cab.
So, yeah, despite being physically much, much closer, it is much harder to get to. It's it's closer to Manhattan. It's like, it's like it makes no sense. So, our previous shitty governor wanted to build a train, like a special train that goes to LaGuardia from the subway. Good idea on paper, but the route selected for this train was inane, right? It involved going way past the airport and then taking a train backwards. It would only be beneficial for someone from Long Island who could take the Long Island Railroad and then go to the airport easily.
I remember when we saw that original map and all of New York collectively said, "What?"
Right. Most of the people who go to the airport, over 50% are coming from Manhattan. So it makes sense to have the train going from Manhattan to the airport on the west side, not the east side, right? Anyway, so that was the plan. We got a new governor. Not perfect, got some problems, but still, I guess, at least 1 point better than the previous governor. That's not hard, but maybe even 2 points better, right? Still got problems, but better, an improvement by at least some measures. Has changed plans, and they had the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, right, who runs these things, because don't even get me into that, what the Port Authority is.
There's a movie, there's an old movie that's obscure that talks about the Port Authority you can find.
Anyway.
It's called Nothing Lasts Forever. It's basically a documentary.
So they had some public hearings, right, of, what the fuck should we do, right? We're not going to, we're not doing the old plan. What should we do to make LaGuardia more accessible, right, transportation-wise? So I had previously attended similar hearings for City Bike. I did one that was a City Bike workshop, which is where should we put the City Bike docks in your neighborhood? And that one, the format was you sit at a table in a circle, right, with a group of random people that you happen to be at a table with, and you discuss, right? And there are many such tables within, and there was a Department of Transportation employee at each table, and they collated their data afterwards. Right?
My answer is put them in every corner, every intersection, the whole city.
I did one of those for the Crescent Street bike lane, which is now existing and now has a concrete barrier.
Oh, yeah. So get this. When I landed from London, my cabbie, I fell asleep in the cab in my mat. I'm just like asleep. And he wakes me up and he's like, Crescent Street is closed. I'm like, what? All of it? He's like, yeah, all of it. How? Where do you live? And when I finally got home, I saw they had blocked Crescent Street because they were currently craning in the new barriers.
Yep.
It's all there now. It's beautiful.
Yep. So,
and I already saw a black car that had somehow wedged it at an intersection, wedged itself in, and appeared to be stuck. So,
but anyway, so that was the same format for that one. Then I did a bus route one, and the bus route one was of the worst format. This was the sort of town hall format.
I mean, the bus anything is always the worst format.
Where they do a slideshow, for the MTA does a slideshow, and then.
It's just the form as function. The idea that, we're talking about buses. We got to make the presentation way worse.
And then townies line up for the mic, right? And that was a bad time, that one. So the LaGuardia one, this is Port Authority. So we went to Department of Transportation. We went to MTA. Now we're at Port Authority. How does the Port Authority run the public, workshop for how do we make LaGuardia less shitty to get to and from? And you know what? To their credit, this is the best format I ever seen. I think this format should be used for a lot more things. The way it worked is they had a ballroom at the local wedding venue type place. And on each side of the ballroom, it was like a science fair. There were basically a poster board on an easel, and each poster board had a transportation option, right? Some sort of thing that could be built. And an attendant, right? Someone who worked for the Port Authority, who was very knowledgeable and could answer questions and explain the thing that was on the poster board, right? Like the kid at the science fair. And so what you would do is you would go in, and at your leisure, you would walk around examining the boards and talking to the people. And then there was a long table full of laptops, and you went up to them and you typed in whatever the fuck thing you wanted to type in.
See, that's how you keep the crazy townie. The crazy townie can type their screed into this text box and not bother anyone else.
And you could submit the form as many times as you want. So the crazy townie can write 10 screeds. Right? And it's not bothering anyone else. And they can just read it or delete it afterwards, right? The normal people can type in what they're going to type in, and then you can leave you don't have to sit there and listen to anything, So this was an excellent format. A lot of the people who were standing at the boards were extremely knowledgeable. I learned all kinds of things I didn't know. And the thing that I found the most encouraging was that, they had so many options, right? Not only did they have the existing option that, the previous governor wanted to do, they had different light rails, subway extensions.
That's the big one. The fact that they included subway extensions, because it is the money to build a subway extension to New York compared to anything else is like, it's orders of magnitude more money for reasons.
Protected bus lanes, ferry terminals, like so many options they had. Underground, above ground, go along the Grand Central, go under the BQE. And they were like, and not only that, but they were like, these options are not mutually exclusive. They're like, we could do the ferry and the bus and the subway extension. They don't bump into each other. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
imagine an airport with more than one way to get out of it. That's what most European airports are like.
That wasn't a car.
So,
yeah. So most of my input was pretty much like, hey, none of these options that you have lots of options here. Boat, train, bus, right? All kinds of things. I don't see any bike or foot options on here.
Yep. Which again,
for something that is so fucking close, I'm like, just put a city bike dock there. Come on.
Yeah, because someone would use it. In fact, there were some flights where I would have used it.
If you're doing a flight where all you got is a backpack carry-on, it's like, I could totally city bike to LaGuardia and back, no problem.
How liberating would that feel to land from a flight somewhere, walk out of the airport, get on a bike, and just bike home?
Yep, in like 15 minutes, too. 20 minutes maybe tops, right?
Probably about as long as it takes to take a cab out of there.
Yeah, so I say, who knows what they're going to do? Are they going to choose what I said that they should choose? Who knows? But excellent format for a workshop. Yeah.
I feel like the only way you could go better would be to let people type their screed, but if you could come up with questions about the proposals that let you do a conjoint analysis of the like mean preference of the group instead of people just trying to get their own idea out, like when you force people to choose of the 14 options, which do you like better, 11 or 14, like force those kinds of decisions, you can tease out ideas that people might not even...
Some of them were mutually exclusive, right? Like there were 2 different subway extensions. One goes through Astoria, right? Like, and then one like along Ditmars, and another one goes north out past Astoria, like behind all the industrial shit, past the power plants, and then takes a hook to the east, right?
I always like the idea of having a line that came from Manhattan under the river and under Randall's Island all the way across and just intersecting the top of Ditmars and then just going all the way out into Queens.
That wasn't one of the options.
No, that wasn't even, that was barely an option in the original subway map.
There was an option to improve the, the buses that go, over Randall's Island. So
anything to make Randall's Island more accessible to people without cars, because that island is a treasure, and the buses that go there are the worst.
Anyway.
All right, I think we can go on to the main bit. Doot. Put a little marker. But anyway, things of the day. So we've talked about Dua Lipa on Geek Nights a few times. Fantastic performer, fantastic musician. And Dua Lipa has a song called Levitating. Scott made it his thing of the day a while ago. I think it was you. I think you called dibs on it. Yeah, the music video.
Not the song so much.
Yeah, because the song is great. The song has a music video. The song also has an official music video animated in the style of Sailor Moon. And it's just delightful. So some band or some label that represents a band is suing Dua Lipa, claiming that the song Levitating is in fact plagiarizing their song. And their song does sound superficially very similar to this song. So Adam Neely has done a very helpful video where he shows that thousands of songs are just as close to both of these songs as the people are suing, and how this lawsuit is absolutely ridiculous. It's almost definitely guaranteed to fail. But if it succeeds, it destroys the concept of music copyright, basically.
Well, it's already sort of been destroyed, right? So there's a huge issue going on in the music industry. It's been going on for a while. But basically, you can get money for free if you can get songwriting credits on a song, right? So let's say, Rim writes a song completely on his own. He's never listened to anyone else's music in his life. He's only listened to public domain classical music, right?
Yep.
He's never listened to anything else.
Like when I was in IBM and I signed some stuff saying I'd never used real Java.
Right. And he writes some song and it sounds like do 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 do, right? Classical song, right?
No, but mine's got a little in it.
Yeah, writes that song legitimately 100% on his own. But then someone else comes along and is like, "Hey, I wrote that song actually, right? Listen to my song." It's like,
and Vanilla Ice starts playing his song.
Right. And then someone else comes along and says, I wrote, it's like, and there are only so many fucking songs that can be made, right? And there's so many people using samples these days in all their songs. So what ends up happening is, rather than fight a protracted legal battle, which is just often, not worth it, even if you win, so a lot of hit songs these days, the songwriting credits get chopped up. Right? Not just the people, you'll usually have a group of songwriters writing the song initially, and then more and more names just get added on there with various percentages, just getting a piece, right? Everyone's got to get their piece. So when someone listens or performs to the song and royalties come in, the money's getting divided up. These micro pennies from their Spotify streams are getting divided up amongst all these people, right? So it's like, if you write a song, even if you write it completely on your own, it's like, if it sounds similar to something else, which it probably will, and that person is listening and litigious, or, it's like, there's free money in it for them. And for you only have things to lose. You have nothing to gain. You're probably going to end up giving them a piece or fighting. It's like, it's a tough choice. So this keeps happening because the incentives are all misaligned and the system is broken. So,
and this one is really interesting because Adam does a really deep sort of musicological analysis of it. But then he also points out that this lawsuit does something weird. All the other lawsuits, all the ones you're probably more familiar with, they make at some point in their legal argument a music theory argument. Like they actually bring out music theory and show like notation and chord progressions, and they make this case that they are fundamentally the same song. But here, this lawsuit actually doesn't do that at all. And it seems to focus entirely on specific older songs that sound like this song without actually doing a musicological analysis. So his argument, at least, is that this is an even easier lawsuit for Dua Lipa to win because they can just point at even older songs that sound even more similar. There's prior art, and the whole thing gets thrown out.
Yep. Okay, so I just went to rollingstone.com, the music industry magazine.
Yep.
I did a search for songwriting credits, right? So you ready? Listen to these headlines. March 2022, Lizzo reaches settlement over Truth Hurts songwriting credits. March 2022, experts get the Dua Lipa one. March 4th, Post Malone skewers musicians suing for Circles credit. Can't prove original contribution. February 2018, right? Frank Ocean sues Blonde producer over songwriting credits. 2015, Paul McCartney talks nixed McCartney-Lennon songwriting credit. 2019, Rolling Stones finally give back Bittersweet Symphony songwriting credits. Yeah. 2021, which Natalie Hemby performed. Oh, that's different. Okay. The point is, this keeps. Those are obviously those have articles on Rolling Stone because those are the biggest of the bigs, right? But there's a lot. 2021, Noah 40 Shabib clarifies R. Kelly credit on Drake's Certified Lover Boy. It's like this goes on and on and on. This is what is happening in the music industry and has been happening for the past 5 to 10 years.
Yep, and it seems like a big part of it is if these do go to trials, which they have in some cases, juries don't understand any of this, and they sound kind of the same, so juries tend to say yes.
Yes, there have been, I don't forget which case it was sort of like, one of the camel's straw back ones, but there were some big ones that, went and set a bad precedent, and that's why people keep going after it. So.
But yeah, so her 2020 song, the people suing her are saying it's their 2017 song, and their 2017 song sounds like it's based heavily on songs from like going as far back as the 30s. So,
Yep.
So anyway, what's your thing of the day?
What the hell was my thing of the day? Oh, right. So this video is from 2014, I think. It's old, but it was new to me, so deal with it. So the University of Georgia, right? A warm place, relatively speaking. It is the University of Georgia is still an enormous university, right? Big, not like RIT, a small private university where we went, right? It's like a huge place.
Yeah.
Lots of students. So they did have an ice hockey team, right? I think they still do. It's they're the Bulldogs, but I think the ice hockey team is the Ice Dogs. But they didn't have an arena, an ice hockey rink, at least not a permanent one that was on campus or anything, right? But in 2014, I guess they wanted to play some home ice hockey games. So what they did is they got a portable ice rink from Ice America, which is a company that can set up an ice rink basically anywhere you pay them to if you can afford it. And they set it up in the ballroom because they have an enormous fucking ballroom at their university, right? Like tremendous, really. Big enough to hold a full-size ice rink and seats. And in this video, Ice America shows how they set up a portable ice rink indoors in just a big room with no, right? It's like without making water fall through the ceiling to whatever's below, right?
Yep.
Like,
I mean, we did it. We did an episode, Water in the Ceiling, for a reason. I cannot imagine a more perfect storm of water in the ceiling than trying to make an ice rink like this.
They get a full-size Zamboni in there. They get, grandstands in there. Not that many seats, but enough seats, right? It's like they get, how many layers of ice, and they set the whole thing up in a warm place, by the way, in 48 hours or whatever. It doesn't take them long to set it up. I don't know how long it takes to undo it, but it's pretty impressive. And if you have enough money and you need an ice rink and you want to put the ice rink somewhere that ice rinks shouldn't be, but you have enough room for it. If Ice America still exists and you're in America, I think they're the ones to call.
In the Meta Moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book that we are going to do an episode on, let's say 2 weeks from now. Let's do it.
Okay.
The next Thursday show. So April 14th.
Yeah, you've had 3 months, which is, you know, if we weren't fucking up and spending 2 to 3 years, 3 months is a good amount of time to read a book that took me less than 2 weeks, maybe.
Yep. So I've read a bunch of it. I'll definitely finish. This is such a short read.
Finish it, even though you went to London, all that.
I was actually really busy on the trip, and then I got COVID.
Getting sick.
Yeah.
licking
doors.
people.
Yeah, I mean, the trip was a doorknob licking convention, so in retrospect, that might have been
more excuses for workers' comp.
You know what the worst thing was? When I was like walking around, I was wearing a mask, and I was the only person in London. I think every single person I interacted with had to say something about the mask, like, "Oh, you Americans!" Like everyone's like, "Oh, you're paranoid, like an American."
Yeah, well, I got sick from you, dirty.
So this book is very New York. Scott said this before, but I want to reiterate. I want to know what you think of this book if you don't know anything about New York City.
Yeah, or even if you know things about New York, but you haven't spent a lot of time in New York.
Because even I thought of New York as Manhattan and then, quote, the outer boroughs until I moved here.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started to recognize like Queens and Brooklyn are very different from each other, and Staten Island is technically part of New York City. I kind of didn't know that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, most mass media, right, doesn't usually deal with subject matter that the wide audience wouldn't know without like teaching it to them first, right? A superhero movie won't even assume you know the origin of the superhero, right? It's like, they got to make sure that Batman's parents are dead and Spider-Man got bit and Superman's an alien, right? But it's like if you go watch a movie about baseball, they don't teach you what baseball is, right? They assume you know what baseball is if you're gonna go watch fucking, I don't know, Bull Durham, right? But this book, it's like it assumes you know what New York is, just the way Bull Durham assumes you know what baseball is, right? So if you don't know enough about New York, I'm still really curious how the book comes across. Some of the listener have told me, but I want to hear from more of the listener. So,
and the other thing I can say is that every character like this whole book, every time a new character appears, they are absolutely fantastic without exception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even the bad characters, when they actually show up, are great.
Well, because they're great, and not that they're people you like the most, even though some of them you like the most, or many of them, but they are so exactly correct. It's like, yep, that's that guy. That's exactly how that kind of guy is in the real world. Yep.
When you meet Staten Island girl pretty early on, it's like, wow. It's I've interacted with
what Staten Island girl is like. Yeah,
right?
100%. Right. I know that person. I'm not friends with that person, but I know I have met that person.
Yep. I definitely I know a lot of Mannies in the work that I do.
Oh yeah.
But it's so like, without spoiling things, it's so self-aware. Like it's just like Manny is a good guy in terms of like what the story's trying to do, but also a checkered past, shall we say? Like not everything that Manny does is good, or that Manny did was good, because Manhattan's identity is about a lot of the cruelty that has been inflicted by Manhattan, not just about the cool parts of Manhattan.
Yep. Anyway, anything else meta? Oh, PAX East is real soon, and it's actually happening for real. I'm not going.
Yep. I will be there Thursday, April 21st. That is long outside of my quarantine period. Of course, I'll take negative tests before that, or I'll just bail. But Thursday, April 21st, 7 p.m., Bumblebee Theater. A live and significantly updated version of Atari game design. I think it'll be fun. If you're not there, I'm going to video it, of course, just like I did for Unplugged. So do not go to PAX East just because I'm going to be there. I will definitely put that panel online before the end of PAX East, just like I did with PAX Unplugged.
Yeah, I'm not holding out any hope for PAX West, but I might go. We'll see.
Yep. I am I'm cautiously optimistic as I am about many things. We'll see what happens with PAX.
Not setting any expectation, right? I'll decide when the time comes. I would like to go, obviously.
Yep.
But I'm not gonna set myself up to be like disappointed by not going or anything like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
The exciting thing, I'll just mention briefly, is that PAX, once we're post-COVID and like we're going to PAXs like normal again, PAX has started to set up interesting panel adjacent, but not just panel, like content types, like workshops and things.
Assuming PAX survives or other conventions survive as well, I do think that many conventions have sadly died, but the conventions that live are definitely have been invigorated. They're not selling out their tickets, so they're trying a lot harder content-wise, doing things that we thought they should have done a long time ago, experimenting, etc. And I like that. So
yeah, like if it wasn't COVID times, I feel like we would have done like this upcoming PAX East might have been one of those we signed up to do too many things conventions.
Yeah. I mean, even in the mid to late 2000s, we were trying to get conventions to try out, things that conventions weren't already doing, new kinds of content.
Otakon used to not mail its badges. They accused Scott of threatening them by telling them to mail the badges.
Mm-hmm.
And look where we are now. Everybody mails the badges.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, if PAX does all this stuff, we're running out of things we wanted that cons haven't done. We haven't come up with many new things.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the last one would be curated screenings at anime conventions.
Anyway, let's move on to the main.
All right. I can't believe we've never done a show on James Bond. Like it felt like one of those things we just had to have done.
Yeah, it's one of the major franchises of, media entertainment in the, the English-speaking world and even the rest of the world.
And it's one that is still going. The reason we thought of it is I suggested, on the flight home, I watched No Time to Die, the last I guess spoilers, it's the last Daniel Craig James Bond.
Yep.
But I watched it. It was okay. It was an above-average Bond movie. It was the second best Daniel Craig movie, though I haven't seen Quantum of Solace or Spectre.
I only saw the first Daniel Craig one, and that's it. So.
The thing is, Casino Royale was great, except my only complaint about that as a Bond movie
remember it.
was that it kind of followed the book too closely, and the book has a few improbable events that happened, which... I guess the Daniel Craig James Bond felt too gritty and realistic for the somewhat unrealistic thing that happened in the last third of that movie.
All right.
Anyway, but now like a Pierce Brosnan where he's just got magic. He's basically just a wizard. Like every James Bond is different, so.
Yeah, so I mean James Bond is pretty significant in my life media-wise because, right? It was significant in my parents' life, especially my mom was like a huge James Bond fan, like big time, right? It's like before, I guess my mom also liked Star Wars a lot, but you got to remember, before Star Wars even fucking existed, right? It's like she was going to see every James Bond movie in the movie theater as soon as it came out. And unlike, say, Indiana Jones or...
Hell, by the time Star Wars existed, your parents had been through 3 Bonds.
Right, exactly. Right. It's like there were... the James Bond movies kept coming. It's like, they were like this constant, always there thing. Much easier to be a fan of back then.
Yeah, look, 62, right? 63, 64, 5, 7, 9, 71, 73. Every year or maybe 2 years at most.
Yeah, and it's like even when, Star Wars comes and overshadows it, it's like, oh, got 3 Star Wars movies. Whoa, right? It's like James Bond didn't stop. He just kept going. Right?
Yeah, there was a long pause. After Timothy Dalton, it was a while before there was more Bond, remember?
Right, between Timothy Dalton and GoldenEye was the break period.
Yeah.
But it's like for a long time it kept going, and then once it got started again, it kept going again, right? So, and it, it's still going now. We'll see when they start up again. But it's like been an ever-present thing. And also, I think that it was introduced to, we read a lot of stories from nerds who go about impressioning their kids the wrong way.
Yeah.
Trying to force their kids to like the same thing they like. I've read some possibly false stories on, various Reddits. It could have been made up, but, they're believable stories at least, where, some parent names all their kids after Harry Potter characters and makes everyone watch Harry Potter and cosplays Harry Potter all the time, right? And it's like, and the kids aren't into Harry Potter. It's like, that's not the healthy way to do it, right? But, my mom, like, she wasn't like, sit down or watching James Bond. She was like, she really only did two things, which was express to us that she was a big, like, she was not ashamed to let everyone know she fucking loved James Bond, right? And two, she would watch James Bond a lot when it was on TV, right? And wouldn't be upset if she would like make anyone watch, but it's like, why wouldn't you watch? The movies are actually fucking good, some of them. So
yeah. I mean, same thing. Like my parents just put on Star Wars one day, and about 20 minutes into it, suddenly my kid brain was like, wait a minute, this is cool. This is my favorite thing on earth now. My parents didn't try to indoctrinate me into Star Wars. They just put it on, and I happen to like it.
Yep. So James Bond itself started out as some books. Have you ever read a James Bond book?
Only Casino Royale.
I've never read any James Bond books, so I can't tell you if they're good or not.
Which apparently is the weird one where like the licensing was different for that one compared to every other James Bond book.
Yeah, they're all written by what's his name? What's the guy's name?
Fleming?
Yeah, Fleming. But anyway, the movies, right? They adapted the books into movies, and that was the Broccolis, right? What a great last name, Broccoli. I'm pretty sure the Broccoli family estate like has the movie, like control of the movie biz part of it. But yeah, it started off, black and white movies. Right? The first one was what, Dr. No, right? With the rocket.
Dr. No was the first one. 1962.
With Sean Connery, the dragon, playing James Bond, right? And then after Sean Connery stopped doing it, right? They switched to Roger Moore.
You already skipped someone.
Oh, did I? Who'd I miss?
Lazenby.
Oh, who cares about Lazenby?
Because remember, he did one, and then Sean Connery came back.
Yeah, no, Lazenby was not. No one cares about him.
Yeah, so
no one cares about Timothy Dalton either.
You know why I care about Lazenby? Because for whatever reason, that was the Bond I saw first. I have this memory as a kid. So get this, I had a memory as a kid. This movie was on, and had some spy stuff going on. It was on my grandparents' gigantic projection TV, and all the adults were like talking about it disparagingly. And then I was like, what's this movie? It looks pretty cool. And all the adults were like, no. You haven't seen any of these. And they like made a big harumph. And they went and like,
they were right.
And they were like, no, we're going to watch. And they dug out and we watched a Sean Connery James Bond instead. Cause they didn't want that to be my first Bond. I don't remember. I was like 5.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, then you had Roger Moore, right? Who was
actually, I think it was Thunderball, if I really think about it.
Well, that's like the best one. That's like anyway. And then you had Timothy Dalton, who no one cares. Right? And then you had Pierce Brosnan, who, I think if not for the video game, nobody would have cared.
It's weird because I already encounter people who are very nostalgic for the Pierce Brosnan era of Bond, even though I'll admit it is my least favorite era, but I don't count the one-offs. Like,
I mean, he's better than Lazenby and Dalton, but that's about it.
I mean, right? Dalton got twice as many Bond movies as Lazenby, so.
Sure.
But I did not like the Pierce Brosnan Bond at all. Like, he was a magic wizard man wielding magic wizard gadgets. Yeah. Like, everything felt super fake and super improbable.
Until just now.
Yeah. Daniel Craig, second or third favorite Bond, depending on how I'm feeling.
I guess he's third, right? After Brosnan and Connery. But that's the thing that makes the James Bond movies, right, different from all the other sort of franchises, is that there's this, that connection, right, where it's like there's an actor who's playing Bond and a set of movies, right? And it doesn't matter who all the characters are. It doesn't matter what the plots are, right? It's like the set of movies where that actor was James Bond, right?
Yep.
Like, I don't even know actors' names, but I know all the James Bond actors' names,
right?
It's like are like a set, right? It's like you don't have fucking like, oh, the Star Wars where Hamill was Luke, and then the Star Wars where Daniel Craig was Luke, and then the Star Wars where that doesn't happen.
Yeah, look. In fact, look what they're doing. They're using CG to make sure you still have the original player, like character and actor in a role.
Right. Whereas James Bond is like, it's like it's unique in that way. Is there anything else you can think of where there's a character and the person who plays that character is sort of,
There's the
I don't even know how to describe it.
There's the similar but distinct thing that you see, especially in some anime, where like Lupin anime or I don't know, where you have the same character, mostly drawn the same way, but even played by the same voice actor possibly, but radically reinterpreted by whoever's writing and directing each movie.
I do think you see a little bit of it on the theater, right? Stage Broadway, right? Because you'll have a play and it's an original cast, right? So-and-so plays the main character, right? And then obviously the play has to be shown internationally in other languages, in other places. It goes on tour and you have a different cast, right? The famous person stops being the main character. Someone else takes over on Broadway for the extended run.
But they tend not to radically reinterpret the role unless the production itself is radically reinterpreting the role.
Exactly. That's the difference, is that when you do that with a play, it's still the same script, the same story. It's like if they just made Thunderball over and over and over again with a different James Bond. But this, it's like it's the same character, the same universe with different stories.
But the same, quote, universe. It's like the Leiji Matsumoto verse in that you can't actually make a very clear, good connection between every single movie that's 100%
Not every
consistent.
single movie, but there are some that you can connect to. There are some that fit together.
Oh, yeah. Well, like all the Daniel Craig ones literally are just a progression. Like they all just are sequels to each other.
Exactly. And there are like some that like involve, Spectre, like some Sean Connery ones and whatever that sort of go together a little bit. Right?
Well, they'll bring common elements together. Like there'll always be a money penny. Like there'll always be these elements in the movies, but they might act very differently, be portrayed very differently, serve different roles. James Bond films always seem to try to do one twist in each movie that wasn't like what you expected from a previous movie, to the point that you wait for, like, where's the Bond twist?
But yeah, so I guess, what makes James Bond, right, regardless of who the actor is, right, and regardless of, what flavor is being put on it, I think what makes it fun is that, you get a little bit of everything no matter what, right? It's like you get action.
Usually there's a pretty big action scene in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Usually it's the best action in
the cold open
movie. Is going to be the chase scene, right? It always starts with action. Usually.
That's why I was such a big fan of Daniel Craig, because when they brought him onto the scene, Casino Royale, first scene, in media res, chase scene. Almost like, you can't go wrong.
Bond movie is going to start with that almost, right? And that the chase scenes are not all. There's plenty of car chases, no shortage, but there's not just car chases, right? You get, the skiing chases are really incredible. Right?
Oh yeah.
Were they? I don't even know. Were they the first? Some of the earliest / best ski chases, right?
I mean, some of the best scenes in Inception were the ski chases because they were very Bond movie like.
Oh yeah, total Bond ski chases there, right? So different kinds of chases you got going on. A lot of boats going on, right? A lot of swimming and all kinds of stuff, right? I remember, Live and Let Die, right? Which is not a good one, but it's like my favorite one. It has good aspects, at least. I can.
That was the first Roger Moore one, right? First or second?
It was the first Roger Moore one.
I think it was early in his run.
Moore. Even though I like Sean Connery better than Roger Moore, Live and Let Die is like, because there's the campy chase scene, right? We have the boats and the cars. The ridiculous, racist Southern cop guy.
Yeah.
And it's like the three-way chase between Bond, the cops, and the bad guys, right? And it's got, like the hovercraft going over the road to the other side, It's like, that's a really good, that's almost, I'd say that, like, in terms of, comedy car chases and movies from Hollywood, it's like Blues Brothers 1, Live and Let Die 2, right?
I'd believe that. Maybe number 3 is Blues Brothers
Obviously,
2000.
Brothers way ahead. Number 1, not even close. But you know, so you get stuff like that. You get the comedy is always there in some aspects.
That's something a lot of people like. I don't like the Pierce Brosnan movies because they feel really fakey. But don't get me wrong, they are funny, and I appreciate that. And some of the people who are mad about some later James Bond movies, they try to argue that, well, they're too funny or they're too like there's too much comedy injected. But
there's always been comedy.
Yeah, that's like the people who complain about the politics in Star Trek in these newer Star Treks. Like, what were you watching?
And then you have this mix going on where you sort of have the serious spy stuff, right? Like try to stop, Cold War stuff.
Yep.
Right?
But like the plots are actually kind of stupid and fakey. There's always this like megalomaniacal, like expert villain or this ridiculous magic weapon.
Yep. It's
something on the moon.
It's a mad scientist, science fiction villain mixed with the real world, dictator, evil communists or whatever, right? Autocrat, villains, like combined into one, right? So it pulls the wacky mad scientist down a bit to where it's not just, nonsense, right? But it makes what would otherwise be like a really sort of uninteresting, boring, like a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy kind of spy thing, right? And makes it more fun.
Yep, because real spying would be more like, all right, he's dressed like a nerd and just quietly living in the city for a month, writing things down.
Yep.
That's exciting.
And then on top of all that, you have these sort of Bond, taglines. Don't have a cowman, mustard, right? Q with a funny gadget and a car that shoots a missile, right? The tropes and cliches, that are, they bring, familiarity, nostalgia, fun, whatever,
like
to connect them all together.
Like if you've seen a few Bond movies and then you watch any random Bond movie, something in it will evoke specific memories from those other Bond movies. Pick any 3 and you'll find connections between them. Like, oh yeah, they all had a Gatling gun in the headlights of his car. All 3 of them did. Yep. Like, you'll always find something.
If you tried to make some other movie and you did any of those things, like you've had a car with an ejector seat, right? Someone's going to be like, that's a, James Bond ripoff right there.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, there are movies with cars with ejector seats, but you just can't help but think of James Bond when you see that, because even if they weren't the first to do it, it's like they just have ownership over, some of those things like that in some way.
I think it's worth pointing out that one aspect of Bond films that I personally appreciate, even though there's such a tiny part. I mean, the music's fine. Like, they have their motif that they use, but specifically the opening credits in Bond movies.
Yeah, that's one of the nostalgia, things, right?
And
they always open every James Bond movie. You get the end media res action scene.
Yep.
Right, and then it goes, right. It comes across the thing. Right, and he shoots the screen, right? The blood comes down, and then the opening is always some sort of really artistic, thing with lots of like silhouettes of naked people swimming and some song playing, right? It's always a song for the movie. The title of the song is the name of the movie, right? One time I think they got Madonna due to the song, right? It's always some big time song they pay to have made just for the movie.
I haven't seen some of the older Bonds in a while, but I think the best opening sequence I can remember from any Bond movie is actually from Skyfall, even though Skyfall itself, the entire end of that movie is absolutely stupid.
I mean, I can't remember which opening goes with which movie, so I can't really...
It just had a particularly good song and a particularly good, like, the theme. It was a card theme. All the Daniel Craig movies have a similar sort of theming to them.
But the point is, it's, if you want to talk about just the songs alone, again, Live and Let Die is a song that you'll listen to. No one's going to put on You Only Live Twice, like, just because they want to listen to that.
I am confident there are people who just listen to that song.
Someone will, right? But Live and Let Die is like it's like Paul McCartney Wings, right? It's like a it's like, So yeah, I guess what else is there to say? Like some of the best ones, right?
I mean, if
so
I had my favorite,
I already said my favorite one is Live and Let Die, right? Best ones are gonna be, Thunderball is really up there. It's probably number one.
Thunderball's got a lot of very
jetpack,
specifically tense scenes, especially when I was young and I hadn't seen a lot of James Bond movies yet.
Mm-hmm. Let me look at a list of them.
Yeah, I just found a list. I'm trying to remember which one is which.
And miss one, right? We could just down the list of ones we've seen and briefly comment.
I had not seen Moonraker until I played the N64 game, and there was the Moonraker laser, and I was like, oh, I guess I should see that James Bond movie. And I went back.
Moonraker is fun for if you're a kid. That's like super fun because it's all in space with lasers and Jaws and all that great stuff. I actually had like some collectible Moonraker cards, like trading cards, which had photos from the movie printed on them. But not really a great movie when you think about it.
License to Kill is the Timothy Dalton one I saw. I never saw The Living Daylights.
That one has the best title. License to Kill is the best title because that's one of the shticks, right? Sean Connery is a license to kill. That's how come he can just go around shooting bad guys and not worry about it.
That was a fun thing about Casino Royale. That opening scene is him just murdering a dude to get his 007 license.
Yep. I like You Only Live Twice a lot, right? Because the whole shtick where James Bond fakes his death and it's like a whole, the premise is really good, right? The Man with the Golden Gun, I don't know, it has that sort of Paradise Island thing going on, right?
I worry it doesn't hold up that well as a movie. Like it's a little too slow.
It's like he's going after the man with 3 nipples, right? But it's like, again, that's just really fun. Shades of Goldfinger, right? Somehow the bad guy is involved with gold, right? In some way.
Well, that's because there's these recurring stories, these recurring arcs.
Yep.
Like No Time to Die is all about, guess what? Spectre.
Yeah.
And Blofeld and like all that nonsense is back.
Yep. I guess Octopussy has that whole that island vibe going on. Right?
Yeah,
setting,
I don't remember.
Right. That's the other thing is that the James Bond
Octopussy.
movies always have like a different international setting. There's a lot of traveling going on between locales.
The Fabergé egg.
Right. James Bond is like super worldly. He's going all over the place to do his spying, different countries, and you get to see architecture and, local markets and industrial places. Like you get to see just a lot of stuff in these movies. You get some of the fun that you get by actually traveling the world. You sort of feel that a little bit when you watch pretty much any one of these. I don't think there are any that take place like strictly like in like London only. It's like he only goes to London to like go to the like does any I can't remember if he actually has to do any spying there. It's usually somewhere else.
Yeah, Bond wouldn't work as like a one-room play. Like no story they tell could work like that. No, it's always like, we figured out the problem in London. Now we've got to go to Jakarta to meet the guy to do the thing.
Mm-hmm. I forget which one it was. Was it Tomorrow Never Dies, or was it The World Is Not Enough that had?
Well, what happens in it? Because I watch most of the all the Roger Moore ones. I mostly watched on my grandparents' giant projection TV when I was young.
It was The World Is Not Enough, and all I could remember from The World Is Not Enough, 1999. Yeah, that's.
I don't think I saw that one.
Oh, all I remember from that is that Denise Richards was really hot. Like, wow. There's always, which is the other aspect of Bond movies that perhaps, especially the older ones that does not hold up so well is extreme misogyny and male gaze. There's always several Bond ladies going on.
Yep.
Right. The fact that they're even called Bond ladies as if
tells you everything. Though later Bond movies would try to either poke fun at that concept or invert it with varying degrees of success.
Yeah, well, not in 1999 they weren't. Right?
No,
so.
But like in No Time to Die, it was interesting because Bond meets a Bond woman at the point in a Bond movie where there would be that scene, and she sits down and she takes off her wig and she starts to undress a little bit, and he's like, "You're moving fast," and she's like, "Well, this is how you normally do, don't you? Hi, I'm the new 007." Like they just inverted on him. Then he meets another woman who he thinks is a Bond woman. She's a CIA agent. Every woman he meets is as skilled as him and is trying to trick him to do something.
Yeah. I mean, there were examples of that in older movies where the Bond woman wasn't just some do nothing.
But you just said it. It was always wasn't just like they'd have one redeeming quality or one plot.
There would be women who were capable spies, on their own, right? Strong and active and CIA agents or, other cooperating agents of some kind, but there was still a sexual element to it. Right. It's like, yeah, she's going to help me shoot some bad guys and then we're going to get it on. Right. It was like, or I'll be sad that she's dead and get it on with the one who's still alive at the end.
Yep.
Right? I mean, a lot of James Bond movies end with James Bond getting it on in a train or a boat as the camera pulls away.
Yep. They also... The first third has him get it on with the first Bond woman who then dies and drives him into the plot.
Yep. So, that element of save and bang the girl is there and is probably, I guess, the least good part.
Well, if you want to see if you remove this, because James Bond movies, they weren't all great. Like, I enjoy them, but a lot of them are not great movies. They don't really.
I don't think, even it's like, okay, I said Thunderball was the best one. Agree or disagree, whatever, right?
It's not on my top 10 movie list.
Thunderball deserves to win the best Oscar picture in the best, picture Oscar in no year. No year in which Thunderball is the best picture against any, right? It's like, so... I feel
like if you put that in theaters next to whatever was playing in 1899, you might have won an Oscar if there was an Oscar back then.
Find the year with the shittiest movies you can find, and I guarantee you that whatever won Best Picture that year, it might not be that much better than Thunderball, but it's better.
But because they were consistent enough, and somehow it became an IP that Americans in particular, but also internationally, it became known. Not as many people remember the Flynn movies, which are basically knockoff Bond. And imagine Bond without even this barest hint of self-reflection and adaptation to the times. That is what the Flynn movies are like.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of action movies that focus on one dude who's a spy or agent or cop or right. It's like, and it's like. Why, some of them continued, right? How many diehards are there? Or how many Lethal Weapons are there, right? I guess, they're they each have their slight differences, right? But it's still there's an action hero in a series, right? But they weren't able to carry on for, 62, 40, 60 fucking years plus, right? That's what has any movie series carried on that long? Even close?
It's possible. I mean, we could see with the explosion of Star Wars stuff.
Star Wars is, I guess, 10 to 20 years younger, but it has way less movies. Way less. James Bond is 3 or 4 or 5 times as many movies as Star Wars does. Star Wars is 9.
Yep.
Right?
Of course, now what we could see, it'll be really interesting to see if there start to be Bond TV shows or TV movies or streaming things instead of just pure traditional theatrical releases like every other company that owns a long-running IP is doing.
Well, there was James Bond Jr.
There was James Bond Jr.
And was there, I think there's James Pond, I believe.
I mean, there's lots of parodies of James Bond.
Yeah, James Pond, underwater agent for the Sega Genesis.
But no, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 James Bond movies before Star Wars was in theaters.
Yeah, exactly. There was, I also wonder, right? All these James Bond video games, especially GoldenEye for N64, right? But also,
yeah, I make fun of that game because I had a computer at the time, but. If you ignore the fact that, yes, technically there were computer FPSs, if you were lucky enough to have a computer back then, for most people in that era, GoldenEye was possibly the greatest video game they had ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, but it's if not for GoldenEye, would James Bond have carried on?
Yeah, because remember, right? GoldenEye
would it have been able to make it from the 90s to the 2020s.
Well, GoldenEye, because also the movie, remember, Timothy Dalton might have killed James Bond. Like, after License to Kill, that was 1989. GoldenEye was 1995. You can go read a Wikipedia article on why there weren't Bond movies during that period. A lot of it had to do with Bond wasn't that popular anymore, and a lot of people were blaming Timothy Dalton or the writing. There was a lot of debate as to what was going to happen to James Bond. Pierce Brosnan and that franchise, like, for whatever reason, 1995 was the year Bond exploded again.
Mm-hmm.
It could just as easily have been a flop and ended Bond.
Yeah, especially when you think about like the amazing movies that came out in 1995, right? You had
I got to make sure I don't say a 1996 or 1997 movie.
No, I think it was not. I think it was 94 were the good movies.
Yeah, Scott, I was going to say 95. You got Batman Forever. We've got the Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Oh, Johnny Mnemonic.
93 and 94. So I guess maybe that's what happened is that, in 93, 94, all those good movies came out, right? And then, people were, big on movies. And then in 95.
Billy Madison, Ace Ventura 2, The Net.
Yeah.
Oh, 12 Monkeys. Okay.
It's not like every movie was good, or bad then.
12 Monkeys was good.
Yeah.
Billy Madison was good by a very narrow definition of it's the second best Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, no, but like 93 and 94 were like some of the biggest movie years ever, right?
Tommy Boy. 95 had a lot of movies that I remember.
Yeah.
Rob Roy, Major Payne.
You were the right age then.
Yeah, that was an era when I was still going to the theater a lot, and I had a lot of free time, and I saw a lot of these movies in the theater.
Yep. But I guess if 95 had weaker competition.
Seven, The Brady Bunch, Crimson Tide, The First Night, Waterworld.
Yeah, maybe it was timing that helped out GoldenEye there a bit as well. Who knows?
Yeah, a lot of big blockbusters in that time. Also, there's a lot going on then, but also it was a reimagining of James Bond. It turned him into a wizard, which at least worked. Like, that was an era when movie effects were getting better and they could pull off crazier effects. You got to say, as much as I don't like Pierce Brosnan Bond movies, the action scenes are a lot tighter than the Sean Connery action scenes. If you watch a Sean Connery Bond movie on a modern 4K screen, like a Blu-ray of it, the effects don't look great.
Well, but at this, for the time though, right? It's, I think, the James Bond movies in terms of Hollywood effects and production occupy this place where, they're not at the absolute Star Wars pushing the boundaries of what can be done, right? With cameras and, technology and computers, right? But what they are is high budget. They always have a lot of money.
Right? They were doing the best you could do for that era. That was it.
Like the best of what can be done with the established, right, stuff.
Yeah, like if you think if you watch a Sean Connery car chase and you're like, that wasn't that great, I could see the rear projection. Go watch any other car-related scene from any movie released in that same year.
Yep. So, it's like a showcase of like, not some, push the art form forward deal, but it's like, take the established, right, techniques that and equipment and technology that you already have,
and just throw money at them.
Do it the best that it can be done by the book that's already been invented, right? So James Bond wouldn't do like a Tron, right?
Right.
CG before it's good. Ideal.
But I guess the way it feels is if you watch original Star Wars movies, the lightsaber fights are like, they work, but they're not great. Like, just the way the actors move.
Well, they were great if you watched them then.
They were, but they weren't even
anything better.
But they weren't even great by like sword fighting from contemporary movies standards.
Well, about sword fighting though.
True. But like watch, I don't know, Obi-Wan's fight with Darth Vader, and then immediately watch, I don't know, any.
Well, that's like the weakest one.
It is, but that's also the best Star Wars movie. So watch that, and then watch, I don't know, Yoda fighting someone from a later Star Wars movie. And you can see a lot of differences, and you can make a lot of comparisons. And the The cinematography science is not quite as tight in the old movie in terms of like how to make the action scene look actiony, but it's still a good scene. And that's what I would say about the old Sean Connery Bonds. Like, there's still, even if you can see he's clearly driving in a fake car with a rear projection, the scene still like pulls you in. You still like kind of forget that and start to be like, oh shit, when like he takes a sharp corner. The applause, like your body and your brain will agree that it is still a compelling scene despite seeing the seams around the edges. That is the most high compliment I can give to old Bond movies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, consider this, right? So Thunderball came out in 1965, right?
God.
And he's got the scene with the jetpack, right? And it's like, by today's standards, it's it's okay. I can see what you did, how you made the jetpack happen.
I mean, The Rocketeer was in 1991, and that jetpack scene does not look that much better.
No, it doesn't. But also look at other movies from 1965, right? Like sci-fi movies, like what? I've never seen any of these that I just Googled up, right? But Nightcaller from Outer Space. I guess it's like Crack of the World. I even know what that's about. Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet. It's like those are probably even more hackneyed looking.
Hey, Frankenstein meets the space monster.
I'm gonna hazard a guess and say that those not pulling off the the dude in a costume or whatever thing very well. So,
but yeah, I guess I actually, of all the James Bonds, I have enjoyed watching the Daniel Craig ones that I watched, which is only 3 of them. And now, after the show, I have this weird urge to go back and watch some older Bond movies.
Yeah,
again.
I feel like, it would not be a waste of time, even if some of these, are not the greatest, right? Like Timothy Dalton, right? It's like
some of these I just have, like Timothy Dalton, I remember this long scene with a helicopter and literally nothing else.
Yeah, I feel like it's really, well, I said none of these are Oscar winners. Maybe some of them are. I don't know. But I feel like it's not a waste of time to watch all of them, really. Maybe I'll go back and catch up on, whatever I wonder.
You know what? You could get away with watching the first one that each actor made because they tend to be pretty similar. Like the Sean Connery Bond movies didn't change that much from beginning to end. From what I remember, I have not seen Dr. No since I watched it on a TV at my grandma's house.
Yeah, Dr. No, is one of those. It's it's more mad scientist-y if you couldn't tell by the title, right? It's it's with the rocket at the end. Right?
Yep.
It's like that's that for a kid at least that makes it real exciting. The same way that Moonraker is exciting for a kid.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, James Bond. I think it's a unique, even though it's just another big media property, I think it's unique in a lot of ways. It has positive and redeeming aspects. It has bad aspects. But I guess, whether we want it to or not, they're going to keep making it as long as people keep putting money behind it and people keep going to see it. And I think the only thing that could really kill it is if,
people lose interest.
If older generations die and newer generations don't pick up on it. So, I guess if you didn't have a mom who was a super James Bond fan putting it on all the time and you happen to also like it, or if you haven't seen any, I would recommend that you do. It's not as worth your time as watching legendary movies of, the greatest, but your life is short, but it's long enough that you've got time to watch some James Bond.
Yeah, Bond movies are good fun. And I'll stop the stream.
Okay.